Hello, everyone, and welcome to our specialist salon on yoga, the union of body, mind, and spirit. My name is Trina, and on behalf of myself and my global team members at Asia Art Hong Kong, we would like to thank you all for joining our specialist webinar on yoga as visual art. Today, we aim to shed some light on how ancient iconography can help us to understand the deeper messages behind the practice of yoga. I am really delighted to introduce our speaker, Nitish Sudhir Soundalgekar. Nitish currently works for the education department at the Rijksmuseum Muiderslot. He wrote his thesis on the dissemination of yogic knowledge through ancient Indian iconography. He also ran a series of meditation Mondays and hosted an international yoga day for the staff, working with the Asia Art department at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Nitish received his certification diploma in yoga teaching in India, and he continues to study and teach on yoga and meditation. Before we begin his talk, please feel free to type any questions you might have in the chat box below. After his presentation, he will guide us through a mindfulness exercise, and then we can have a Q&A time with him at the very end. I'd like to pass over to Nitish to begin now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trina, for your introduction. And thanks a lot to all the partners of Asia Art Hong Kong for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. So without much further delay, I will share my screen and let's dive into the topic. Yoga, union of body, mind, and spirit, yoga as visual art, the power of dissemination through iconography. Now, as you can understand from the time, I want to speak a little bit about the philosophical part of yoga, as well as how we can understand the message of yoga through an artistic medium. So before we actually start, let's just take a small moment for ourselves to be focused on today's presentation. Inhale deeply and exhale. Inhale once again and exhale out all your problems. Very nice. So just a bit background about why was I inspired to do this talk on yoga in visual arts. So as Trina mentioned in the introduction, I did my yoga teacher training in the Himalayas in a city called Rishikesh. It's called the yoga capital of the world. And over there, I noticed that there are not only Indians, but a lot of foreigners also come there to learn yoga. And so I realized that many people have a lot of misconceptions what actually yoga is, or even the way it is pronounced. It's actually yog and not yoga. Most of us say it in an incorrect way. So we try to say things correctly. People think it's a sport or it's worshiping a religion, or maybe they think that, oh, it's only for super flexible people. No. Today, through this medium of arts, we are going to realize how we can actually understand the deeper essence of yoga through these ancient Hindu-Buddhist sculptures. And my arguments are also based on David Friedberg. He is a professor of history of art at Columbia, and he wrote this wonderful book, The Power of Images, which talks about psychological responses towards art. So what actually happens when you meditate on an art sculpture? And indeed, this talk or this thesis indeed serves to be a guideline to study yoga through an artistic medium. At the right, I have two images, a practitioner and also Buddha. Both are sitting in a lotus pose. And the lotus pose is very important in this yogic practice. I'm sure you must all be knowing a bit about this, but lotus pose is very beneficial for meditating, for having a meditational posture, and as well as I like to always compare life to a lotus, because just the way a lotus grows in a pond surrounded in a very muddy area, but at the end of the day, it's very beautiful. In the same way, we in this tough Corona times are surrounded by all these negative problems, but it's up to us how much to blossom just like the lotus, or be having a brilliant personality just like the Buddha. Even Buddha, people pronounce it as Buddha, but it's actually Buddha. Now, just a bit about what is yoga. The most important book on yoga is written by sage Patanjali called Yoga Sutra, a very ancient book. And he says, Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is elimination of mental patterns. Does he say anywhere, yoga is doing crazy headstands, handstands? No, he does not. He only focuses on the mental aspect of it. Even Krishna in Bhagavad Gita mentioned, yogaha karmasu kaushalam, which means excellence in karma is yoga. Now, karma is not just seen as something negative, that's something that bounces back, but it's basically your task, what you do in your life. Are you giving 100% in whatever you are doing? So that might not just be meditation, gardening, cooking, cleaning. Are you giving your 100% in it? That is also yoga. And so Patanjali gives these Ashtanga Yoga, which is these 8 steps of yoga. Let's go over them very quickly. First are the 5 yama, which are social codes of conduct. Non-violence. Now, when I say non-violence, it's not just, not to beat people or something, but it's also your thoughts. What kind of thoughts are in your mind? Are you having negative thoughts? What kind of things are you eating? Now, we are not here to promote any kind of ism like veganism or vegetarianism, but it's just being aware what is actually going in your body. You can think much more on that. Truth, non-stealing, self-restraint, and non-greed. Basically, being a balanced individual and being truthful to yourself. That is important. Then you have the 5 niyam, which are personal codes of conduct. Now, purity, of course, it's about physical purity. You shower and everything, but it's also mental purity. What am I thinking? Is this beneficial for myself, for the world, for the family? Content, not to be extremely having extreme craving desires. Are you satisfied with what you have? Are you appreciating every moment that you're living in? Efforts, again, as I said, giving your 100% in whatever you do. Self-study, which is study of yourself. Some people at night, they like to write down upon things. I will look at these things and do them next day. And surrender to the Supreme. Now, for some people, it might mean Shiva or Buddha or God. For some people, it might just mean energy. And whatever is for you a supreme entity, the aim is to surrender to that. After that, the most, not exciting, but the most visual aspect of yoga, I would say that comes is asana, which is the postures. All these poses, peacock pose and crow pose and tree pose. And as you see, this is only 1/8 of the whole yogic journey. Then you have pranayam, which is the breathing exercises. We will be doing one of them, as Trina mentioned, at the end of the presentation. And then once you are more controlled on your breath, then you eventually have a more introspective journey, which is pratyahara. You stop getting bothered about small disturbances around you. You become more within yourself, which leads to dharana, which is concentration. Are you very well concentrated on the object or on the task that you're doing, which leads to meditation. Now, it's very funny here because some people say, oh, I'm meditating today for 5 minutes. I'm like, are you meditating or are you trying to concentrate? It's also something, I think meditation is something that happens. And the first 6 steps are what you do. And the last step, samadhi, which is contemplation, pure bliss. You become an entirely balanced individual. So that is yoga, just in short. And what has been written about yogic iconography or yoga in art? A lot of scholars have written about this. I choose some of the famous ones. Ananda Kumaraswamy, he was a Sri Lankan Tamil author. And he mentions that this concept of dharana is a desire to concentrate for spiritual benefits. And he mentions a very nice thing. It's self-identification with the sacred. Now, what happens here, if you see an image of Buddha towards the left, when the yoga practitioner or the monk or the priest or anyone used to concentrate on the image, he or she slowly began to self-identify with the sculpture, with the qualities that are reflected through the sculpture. For instance, you see in the sculpture of Buddha, you have the lotus pose, which I've just mentioned in the beginning for concentration. You also have the curly hair, which are tied up. It's a sign of liberation from bondage. You also see that the Buddha is sitting in a straight back. Now, every yoga teacher will always tell you that, oh, make sure you're sitting straight, you're not lopsided, in a perfect posture. And then you have the eyebrow mark in the center, which is a which is an indication of a highly developed intuition. If you might have heard about the 7 chakras, the chakra located in the eyebrow center is about a developed intuition. So what Kumaraswamy is trying to say that these sculptures are not just any object, but they also have a transcendental quality. This I personally relate because being a Hindu myself, we have a lot of idols in our house. And whenever an idol falls on the ground, or if by mistake I touch my leg to the idol, I touch it and I say, oh, sorry, I apologize to it. Maybe for some people, it will be like, oh, it's just an object. But this is the spiritual quality of the sculpture that Kumaraswamy is talking about, the awareness of transcendence. Another nice scholar, which I think is important to bring up here, is Stella Kramarisch from Austria. And she talked about this making invisible visible to the naked eye. Now, as I said, concentration or energy, you can't really see energy or concentration, but through a medium of these sculptures, you can kind of understand what does yoga actually help us to do. But then you also have some other scholars, for example, Vikichari, and he says that, oh, it's not much about transcendence or something. It's more about these images. They are like that because of the political, social, cultural conditions in the society at that time, which also I agree. So you might be seeing that there is a lot of discussion happening that is there something metaphysical, spiritual happening in these sculptures, or is it just purely an object or an aesthetic? So what I did is I did some field trips in these locations across Mumbai. I chose these locations not just because they are close to Mumbai, where I'm from, but also because they are some of the most ancient sites in the country. So 3 Buddhist locations, Sanchi, Kanheri, and Ajinta, and 3 Hindu locations, Elephanta, Ellora, and Badami. Now, if you look at the locations which are Buddhist, in Theravada, so the previous version of Buddhism, you have roughly the period of architecture in the Indian subcontinent is 3rd century BC, so very early, towards 2nd century AD or Common Era. Now, what do you see in Buddhist art architecture during this time? You see on the right an image of the stupa. Again, people say stupa, but it's actually stupa. And this stupa, if for those of you who don't know what a stupa is, it has relics in the center or at the bottom. And these relics can be of either the Buddha for most of the time, or it could be of some famous Buddhist monk. So what happens is David Friedberg says this notion of triggering when monks used to undertake pilgrimage to reach this stupa. It's located on a hill, so it's a very remote area. When the monks used to undertake this pilgrimage, they used to feel, oh, after all these efforts that I have done, I now feel closer to the Buddha himself because of the presence of the relic. And then they become more concentrated to meditate on the stupa. And so in a way, they also put it as a journey undertaken for benefits which are possibly unobtainable on the earthly life. And Vidya Dehejia, she's also a famous scholar, and she says that these relics help the yoga practitioner to witness some kind of proximity to the Supreme. Now you see at the left is a cave, is the oldest cave of Kanheri, it's cave number 1. And you see it's a very simple cave, long doors, windows, not a lot of decoration, and a pair of stairs leading. So you see, you don't actually see any excessive decorations. The decorations that you see on the stupa are much later. Originally, it was just a mound. So what she says is that these cave dwellings, they are in a way, they quieten the mind of the practitioner. They are devoid of any kind of distractions. It's just you and the cave, or it's just you and the stupa and the presence of the Buddha that you feel in it. So the faith was very simple in these ancient times. Later, what happened is Mahayana in the Buddhist architecture. So the period you find of art sculptures in the Indian subcontinent can be around 3rd century to 8th century AD. I must mention that Theravada was still going on. Kanheri was still active till 10th century. but this is the period which I concentrate on the cave. So what happened here in Mahayana is that Buddha doesn't just stay as a preacher or a guru, but he becomes a deity who is set apart from all kind of worldly problems. And so what happened is people started to feel a need to concentrate on something. Just having this might not necessarily be enough. So then you have the image of the Buddha. People have also argued that in the Gandhar region, so northwest Afghanistan and Pakistan today, where also used to rule, there is a lot of influence you see in the Greek hairstyles, the curly hair sculptures, and the Buddha's curly hair. People also say that there is a lot of impact that we got from the Greeks over there in this image making. And so why was an image made? In case you have any kind of distractions, obstructions, then you tend to be focused on the image. That was the biggest purpose of the image. And then you also have the development of Bodhisattva, which is Buddha to be. So Bodhisattva is someone who postpones his nirvana for helping people on the planet. And so you see in the Kanheri caves on the extreme left, you see an image of an 11-headed deity. It is actually Guan Yin, and it is in Sanskrit, it's a Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Now, is it practically possible to have 11 heads? No. But what does this mean? That you have developed a very high intuition, that you can even see some things which might not be immediately seen. You become more spiritual, more mindful within yourself. And so what you see in these images is like an inspiration. There is no ego, there is no anger. It's just patience, humility that the monks or the practitioners used to witness in these images. At the right, I also have an image of Mahaparinirvan, which is the reclining Buddha. And in reclining Buddha is also in a yoga class when you do Shavasana, so the final pose. And then the teacher will say, turn on one side and come back to sitting position. Why this turn on one side? Because when you are in the corpse pose, then you should take some moments to come out of it. And this were also the final resting moments of the Buddha himself. Then what happens is a very interesting development. You see Hindu cave art blossoming around the Indian subcontinent. It's the period as late as 10th century AD. What happened is during this time, the Indian subcontinent had a lot of invasions from foreign powers. So there was a lot of also destructions, violence, and fight. And people realized that, we somewhere need to be having this balance over here. And then you see this emergence of a lot of sculptures of a lot of Hindu deities, even in the caves. And what is interesting here is some scholars have written that this is just much maligned, multi-handed monsters. These are not monsters. These are just deities, different representations of deities in these images. So now the question is, if yoga is all about balance and simplicity, why do I have so much happening here in the Hindu sculptures? So again, as I said, the time was also a very period of political instability. And these caves were not monastic caves, just like it was for the Buddhist caves, but they became more like shrines to worship Shiva or Vishnu, which are some of the principal deities of Hinduism. Now over here at the left, you see an image of Shiva, but you see the three forms. The extreme left is Aghora, which is an angry form of Shiva. And then at the right, you have Vamadeva, which is a more subtle jewelry form and extremely happy of Shiva. And the center, you see Tatpurush, which is a balanced individual. So what are we learning from this? Is it possible for us to have three heads? No, not that I know. But what is possible here is it's telling you to find a balance in extremely negative and extremely positive situations as well. Because what people say, be positive, be positive, be positive. But sometimes we are like, no, like we have to be realistic. And sometimes you have people who are extremely joyous, extremely happy. So I think the more important message here is to realize the balance, not to be extremely depressed or sad, or not to be extreme. It's good to be happy, but again, keep the happiness to yourself, to your loved ones, share it with your well-wishers, and be a balanced individual. And that's what you learn from this sculpture. On the right is another sculpture of Ardhanarishwar. I think this is a wonderful sculpture. It's a half woman. So you have the breast on the left, proper left, and then it's a manly figure on the right. Now, what does this represent? It is Shiva and his better half Shakti, which is the energy. And this is the biggest example of gender equality in ancient India, which means that masculine and the feminine energies, they both are equal and they both are inseparable. So this was the message that was given to the people through all these stories. You see the yoga poses such as tree pose or cat pose, all those poses come from sages who observed things in the nature. But then you see all these poses in Hindu caves, and they are more through stories of Hindu scriptures, like the stories which were found in the Hindu scriptures. Those were the locations. But I think this is a very wonderful message that is given through caves. Another example of cave art here, the same cave, it's Shiva who's slaying a demon. And what is happening here, you see a lot of movement, a lot of anger happening over here. And we just thought yoga is about non-violence, right? Exactly. So in those days, when it was normal to have wars with swords, this was an inspiration for the people to diminish negative energy. Now, Shiva is the destroyer, but he's not destroying everything. He's just destroying negative energy. And you have a counter pose in yoga that we do today, warrior pose 1, 2, and 3. The practitioner always tells the student to be more balanced, focused in 1, then 2, and then 3, shoot. Does it mean we are telling people to shoot people? No. It's more about that you become a balanced individual, and in a way, you become mentally balanced to destroy all kind of problems that you might be having in your life. Try this pose with dedication. I'm sure it will work out. And so what you see here is caves, they become activity centers. They are not really any kind of being away from the society kind of feeling, but they're actually teaching you to face the society in a strong way. And then another example of Shiva that I like to bring out is the dance in Shaivism. So this is a sculpture of Nataraj. He's a dancing form of Shiva. And again, you might say that, oh, it's impossible for me to have 10 hands. Of course. But what is happening here is Shiva used to perform this dance, the Tandav, to find salvation from the cycle of creation, destruction. And that is what also every yogi or yogini is trying to get in the life, to be away from this continuous cycle of creation, destruction. And so you have these 10 hands, which actually symbolize 10 directions. Now, there are 8 directions, north, south, east, west, and then the other 4. And then you also have 2 other directions, which are above and below in ancient Sanskrit scriptures. So that's the 10 directions. And so these are the 10 hands for the 10 directions. It's a 3-dimensional aspect of life that is represented here. And this led to the birth of classical Indian dance in Shaivism. So every classical Indian dancer also offers his or her homage to the Nataraja before commencing on the dance. So indeed, giving your 100%. At the right, you see me doing the dancing Shiva pose. It's the most basic one. There are many, many more variations in it. But what is happening here? It means that there is a lot of stretching involved. And it's not the most beginner's pose, I would say. So what is happening here? It's releasing the tightness in your body. It's releasing the stress that you might be having. And it's making you into a more fluid, a more open, a person who has more energy flow in the body. And so as you can see, authors have also said that a lot of essence has been disseminated through these ancient sculptures. Now, why caves? Well, Could it be something else? It could also be a studio, or it could also be somewhere else. Of course, we have today, caves are not very much easily accessible for us to do yoga classes. So we have to do it in the home or in the studio. But in those days, why was caves a factor? Of course, there is element of nature. You see an aerial view of Ajanta caves here on the right-hand side. They are surrounded by a river and it's totally forest over there. So also climatic advantage, there is less pollution, you are more close to nature. And caves served out to be an educational hub. So of course, for the monks and then also for the other practitioners, caves served out to be a place like, you learn all this message of yoga and devotion, but at the same time, you're not really being an escapist. You're not running away from life. For example, if you see here on the map of Mumbai, the location of Kanheri Caves is deep inside the forest, and which also happens to be my birthplace nearby. So what you see actually there is you are, it's a feeling that you will learn the practice, you will be devoted in this area, and then you will be able to face the world with much more strength and positivity. So as you see here, people were searching for spiritual benefits. And then now we come back to the arguments of the scholars. I think it's also aesthetic beauty. So the argument which the rational scholar, he says that, it's much about aesthetics, because before, so when I was young, I did not even know this subject, art history. I only got introduced to it when I came in the West. And so to look at an object or to look at a sculpture from an object point of view, it also made me appreciate the details in the sculpture. At the same time, a sculpture for me is not just an object, but it's also something which is lively, which gives a lot of message. So you see, it's a nice conjunction of both the aesthetical part as well as the metaphysical part of it. So what did we see? We saw the visual art of the stupa. So people used to feel a more closeness to the Buddha when they used to meditate on the stupa, because you had the relics inside. It's also a notion of pilgrimage, to feel more mentally purified when you go to this place and then you come out with positive energy. And David Friedberg also mentions this notion of arousal after sensation, when you feel that, now I have concentrated on the image, now I'll be more balanced. It serves as a platform for you to be more proper in doing your yogic practice. And then in a way, Kramrisch also says that art is a medium for attaining samadhi, which is the last step of yoga. You don't need to go anywhere to be in samadhi. You can just concentrate on the sculpture and then concentrate on the things that you want within you. And that will slowly work out in your personality. On the right, I have a very nice image. It's called Yoga Iceberg. And as you saw, that the asana, the posture, the most exciting part on internet is just the tip of the iceberg. And there is a vast essence that lies below it. And indeed, the arts does a very nice role in helping you to understand these deeper layers of yoga. So some major takeaways from this talk is that yogic iconography, I like to put it in this way, is indeed a balanced confluence of the metaphysical part as well as the aesthetical part. And the Yoga Sutra, which is the first textbook of yoga, I also have it here. If you want to get more into the philosophical part of yoga, it's a very nice book. But it's very difficult, I must say. Even I sometimes have trouble. I'm like, what is happening? What is samadhi? So sometimes focusing on an artistic medium does help to slowly understand what the message is behind it. And then for my own further research, I would also like to see that these sculptures were made by artists. We don't know the names today. So were the artists also yogis themselves? That is also because the skill that they represent in this cave art is extremely, I would say, it's marvelous to understand the message of it. So that would be something, what actually happens in the mind of the artist, to understand that. And then finally, it's also a reminder that yoga is not just doing fancy poses, or it's not just for young flexy people, or it's not just for people who get high and everything, because if you do yoga for 1 hour, the poses, and then you go out and get drunk or smoke, you might not get the full benefit. It's the whole holistic lifestyle that comes with this philosophy of yoga. Finally, I would like to thank my family, which has been very inspirational in this journey, all the partners of Asia Art Hong Kong, and Candice Lee, Chingling Wang also, who's my internship supervisor at the Rijksmuseum, all the schools where I learned and the museums where I have been working. And of course, Patanjali, Buddha, Shiva, Krishna, all the personalities who helped me to, I would say, inspired me to give out this message of yoga towards the audience. And so finally, I would like to end with this quote. Some of you all might say, this is so difficult. I must say, of course, it was very difficult. It just happens, it's not something that I pushed my arms on the ground to do it. It will happen to you if you give your 100% to it. That does not mean everybody can do headstand very easily. It does. Everyone's capacity is different. Yoga is not a competition. It's to realize what feels good for your body. I still can't do a proper handstand. So that's totally all right. And finally, I would like to end today's talk by doing a nice pranayama exercise with you all. So if you're still here with me, just close your eyes. And what we are going to do is, we are going to do a technique of pranayama that I do every morning. So I also recommend you guys to do it if you want to get more control on breathing. It's called Bhramari pranayama, which means humming bee sound. So what we're going to do is, we're going to inhale deeply. We are going to close our ears. And then when we exhale, we are going to produce a humming bee sound. So, like that, okay? And this exercise is extremely beneficial if you have any kind of stress, or if you have any kind of, you're having bad mornings, basically, then this exercise will definitely help you to release it out. Okay, so let's do it together. Close your ears, inhale deeply. The longer you do, the better it is. Inhale once again, feel all the vibrations. And one last time, inhale. Keep your eyes closed, rub your palms. And with an inhalation, place your arms on your eyelids. Feel the energy, the heat. And slowly and steadily, once you're done, with a smile on your face, you may open your eyes. Okay, namaste. Thank you everyone for listening. I would like to, further pass over to Trina for question and answers.
Thank you, Nitish. Let's start with the first question. In the earliest times of Buddhism, there were no images of Buddha. He was represented by images of his footstep or deer or the Dharma wheel. Earliest images are from Gandhara period. What was the yogic contemplation of iconographic images different from later iconic images?
Right. So if I get the question, it's like earlier there was no image of Buddha. So how was that helpful? Oh, I think I can see.
Before there were images of Buddha, when there were no images.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in that case, exactly. So because there was a stupa, for instance, stupa was immediately built. I guess, Buddha passed away in 4th century BC, and then the stupas begin to emerge around 3rd century BC. So before, as I said, let's put it in this way. Yeah, before, the message of yoga, as you also saw through Yoga Sahitam Sutra, it was much more simple. It was not much more about, because of the political conditions, it was not much about any kind of movement or any kind of, distractions happening. It was much more simple. So for the monks, the earlier images were more, they represented more like a more simple message, I would say. And today, then what happened, because the poses and all, they come later, because of also the political conditions in the society. So before, I think it's more like meditational aspect of it. And then later you see a realization of the poses, if that helps.
Yes. Similarly, in the history of this iconography, was it always text or oral history first, followed by visual representation?
That's a very nice question. So actually, in ancient India, most originally things were not actually written. It was more about oral history. So more than oral history, I would like to say the concept of an oral tradition. So all these scriptures, they are actually very ancient, but they were only written much later. So before, it really depends on how you look at it, because before it was also more about oral history indeed. And then, but around this time, when you start seeing sculptures, writing had already been developed. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, and then how long did it take you to fully master yoga? Did the historical background help you to archive better?
Yeah, so I would not say that I have fully mastered yoga or something. In fact, I don't even like to call myself yogi, because people say, oh, I'm yogi and all. You never call yourself yogi or yoga master. It's something that people tell you. But I must say, my background, we used to do a lot of mantras in my childhood. So that definitely helped. But then systematically, I have been doing it since 5 years. So then I think consistency is important. You can't just leave it for a whole week. Yeah.
Okay, and do you have a favorite pose? And what were some of the breakthroughs you had while practicing or studying yoga?
What was some of the?
What is your favorite pose?
Oh, my favorite pose. Wow. I actually love all the, I must say, I really love the headstand. I must say, because it's a moment in which you are basically upside down. And all these years of our life, we have always been standing like this. We never became like this. So it feels very different when I do the headstand. It feels the whole blood is rushing up, and it's more relaxation moment. So I really like the headstand, Shirshasana, it's it. Yeah.
Okay, and what were some of the breakthroughs you had while practicing or studying yoga?
Breakthroughs means, is it more like what were my down moments?
Well, some of the breakthroughs you had as far as like when you mastered something, I suppose, or when you finally were able to do the headstand for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, like that. Yes. So I realized that my body can do so much, and there is so much happiness I can just get through my own body without depending on anything external. That was the biggest. Yeah, I realized that there's so much more scope, and there is so much we can learn just through ourselves. Happiness is all within. Quieten the mind and the soul will speak.
Okay, let's see what else. I have friends who are not giving yoga a try because they are naturally tight. Do you have any suggestions for beginners?
Yes, I would say sun salutations are always a good start. They are a sequence of 10 to 12 poses. So if you do the sun salutations consistently, they're also very good for blood circulation. So if you do them, then slowly you will start to see flexibility in you. And then, of course, as I said, it's not just flexibility, it's about also balance and concentration. So do the pranayamas. There are many more on the internet you will find. We just did one today. Even that will help.
What is your favorite exercise to do before you start studying?
Okay. Yeah. The poses that give me more concentration, balance, like crow pose, so more basic, or tree pose, I must say. Like, even you see the tree pose, the hands are like this. And when the yogis in the Himalayas, they used to observe the trees there, the trees were also like this. And so it's uniting yourself with the tree. So that's a really good exercise for concentration before you start for study. Yeah.
Which temple is most famous to see yoga poses?
Now I would say, so one of the Hindu caves that I chose in Badami, so in South India, there are a lot of, I wouldn't say yoga poses, but a lot of yogic concepts that we discussed today will be will be understood through the caves. So Badami caves are really nice in South India. Built again in the same area in nature and surrounded by water body, a bit detached from the city life. So yeah.
Are the temples in Thailand different than the temples in India?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So the temples in India, they are more, I would say, there is she specifically focusing on Buddhist or Hindu or just in general?
They don't ask, so.
Okay, yeah, because, yeah, no, very good question. See, at the end of the day, you can concentrate on any Buddha, and you get the practice. So even at a Buddha in a temple in Thailand, it might just be that the context, the environment is not the same. There might be more people, because from what I see, I've never been to Thailand, but from what I see in the images, my parents had also been there. There are a lot of people around the temples in Thailand. So whereas the more cave sculptures in Buddha, the cave sculptures in India, they are more in a remote location. So it really depends what you want. If you are looking for something more quick, then I guess any temple will work. But then if you also want to be more deeply engrossed, the cave sculptures would also work. Oh yeah, in Thailand and in Myanmar, I noticed more reclining Buddha. What is the reason that you think? Oh, very nice. Yeah, I think the reclining Buddha is a very special moment of Mahaparinirvan. So when he is actually about to leave the body, and I think that even it's a much later concept that you see in art. To be honest, it's not something that comes early on. And so what happened is when Buddhism spread away from the Indian subcontinent towards Southeast Asia, like Myanmar and Thailand, that concept became more popularized there. And what happened in India, there was also a revival of Hinduism. And then after the 10th century, you also had people from the Arab world coming. So Buddhism was almost declined in India. So that concept did not get further developed over there.
Okay, great. I think we have answered all of the questions. So we're going to complete this session. I wanted to remind everyone that we're going to have another session with Nitish, a webinar on Tuesday, the 21st of September. He's going to be presenting on the topic of wellness and museum sustainability at the Rijksmuseum Amsterdam as part of Asia Art Hong Kong's World Museum Forum. Thank you, Nitish, for your time and especially for your mindfulness exercise, which was, I found it super relaxing and very helpful today. And I also wanted to thank everyone who's participated today and logged in. Goodbye for now.
Thank you so much, Trina, and thank you everyone once again for giving me this opportunity, and see you all next month.